Good morning. This is the DAO's weekly press conference in which we usually do two things. The first is a report on gun violence during the prior week, and the second is highlighting something, either a unit within the office, a particular case, or some other issue of significance that relates to the work that our office does. Today, we will be highlighting what I consider to be an atrocious case in which this office, through the excellent work of ADA Jeff Hajnowski, pardon me, Jeff, has achieved a conviction and also a very lengthy sentence in that matter. Just to give you I will give you the details on the case in a moment. Let me acknowledge who is here first, if I may. We have with us today the Honorable Carolyn Engelteman, First Assistant District Attorney in the DA's office, who is to my left, your right. We have Robert Listenby, also First Assistant District Attorney, to my right, your left. ADA Joanne Pescator, who is the Chief of the DA's office's Homicide and Non-Fatal Shooting Unit and who supervises Mr. Hajnowski, is here. We have ADA Jeff Hajnowski, who actually tried this case and conducted the sentencing. We also have with us today, but not present at the moment, we have Tanya Johnson, who's the mother of one of the two victims of this terrible act of gun violence, the mother of Amber Michael. We have Kathy Lees, who is, along with Tanya Johnson, waiting in another room, and will come in after we complete the gun violence update for information on the case in which her daughter was killed and her daughter's boyfriend was repeatedly shot. We will also have with us today Reverend Dr. Darren McKinney, who is the senior pastor at Bright Hope Baptist Church, where we are, and has graciously invited us in. Let me turn first to our gun violence update for last week, gun crimes update, I should say. This covers the period of February the 18th through February the 24th, with the exception of the following piece of data. Homicides year-to-date stand at 81 as of the 27th of February at 11:59 p.m. On the same date last year, it was 76. This is an increase of 5 homicides. It is a 7% increase as of today. The number of homicides during the period from the 18th through the 24th was 9 homicides and 38 non-fatal shootings. As we've mentioned previously, during the pandemic period, we've seen an average of about 1.5 per day. So 9 homicides is more or less around the 10.5 that we have seen during this pandemic period. There were, during the period from the 18th to the 24th, 135 gun or gun violence incidents. Police made 94 arrests. You should know that many of these are for gun possession. And of those 94 arrests, the Philadelphia DA's office opened 94 cases and charged 94 cases. The median bail set for illegal possession of guns during this time period, according to our data, is $100,000. And the median bail set for violent offenses committed with guns was $262,500. As you're all well aware, this appears to me to be yet another failure of a cash bail system to keep some people in jail who need to be there. But that is what we have. I'd like to reference a couple of gun violence incidents that have occurred before we turn to our second topic. The first is a shooting incident, a non-fatal one, which occurred on Sunday, February 27th at about 10:42 p.m. on the 1000 block of South Street. An approximately 54-year-old black male was shot once in the left cheek during what appears to be an attempted carjacking. The male drove himself to Jefferson Hospital, was placed in stable condition, and no arrest has been made at this time. This investigation remains active and ongoing. Anyone with information is encouraged to immediately contact the PPD Shooting Investigation Group. You notice I said Shooting Investigation Group. During almost the entire period, when we have been doing these press conferences, I would suggest that people contact a particular investigative division. The reason I'm now saying shooting investigation group is because the Philadelphia Police Department has made a move that I have repeatedly said and still believe is an excellent one, which is the creation of a group who are focused not only on homicides and gun homicides, but the creation of a group under Captain Johnny Walker, which is focused specifically on non-fatal shootings. That number is 215-686-8270 or 215-686-TIPS, T-I-P-S. Second incident, shooting incident that is a homicide. This morning at about 1:23 a.m. on the 200 block of West Lehigh Avenue, an approximately 24-year-old Hispanic male was shot 2 times in the back of the head and once in the right shoulder. He was transported to Temple Hospital, where he was pronounced a short time later. No arrest has been made by police yet. Anyone with information is encouraged to contact PPD's Shooting Investigation Group at 215-686-8270, which is 215-686-TIPS, T-I-P-S. Our team and I remain committed to supporting victims, co-victims, and communities impacted by gun violence and other crimes. If you, your family, or your community needs support, counseling, relocation, or other services offered by the Philadelphia DA's office, please contact our Victim Support Services Division, which is at 215-686-8022. I want to talk for just a moment about the case of Commonwealth versus Ronald Murphy. You will be hearing in more detail about this case, both from ADA Jeff Hosjanowski, who successfully tried a case where there was certainly sufficient evidence, but it was not easy, and achieved an excellent verdict, and also a very significant sentence of incarceration. I'd like to talk about that for a moment. I see that in addition to Mr. Hosjanowski, who is here, we are now joined by Tanya Johnson, who's the mother of the homicide victim. Hello. Good morning, Ms. Johnson.
Good morning.
And we're also joined by Kathy Lees, who has been the Victim Witness Services Coordinator, who has worked closely with Ms. Johnson in this awful case. I'm going to summarize for you a little bit about the case, and then turn it over both to Mr. Hosjanowski and also to Ms. Johnson for their comments. I will tell you right now, we are not using the name of the second victim in this case, the boyfriend of Amber Michael. And we are not using it because that is his wish, and because it is extremely important that we protect everyone and anyone who steps up to participate and to testify in this system. On the evening of September 5th, 2016, this case goes back to 2016, Amber Michael, who is, in the language of criminal justice, the decedent, in other words, the human being who died, and her boyfriend, who is a surviving complainant, in other words, who survived the incident, lived, and testified about it in court. The two of them were out celebrating their 1-year anniversary at the YOLO Cafe, located at Susquehanna Avenue and Chadwick Street in North Philadelphia. Ms. Michael left the bar and walked across the street to a takeout restaurant to order food. My recollection is that her boyfriend actually stood outside of that bar and watched to make sure she would be okay. While inside, she was approached by the defendant, who began saying disrespectful things to her. He was essentially flirting with her, hitting on her, put it that way, but it was disrespectful. This prompted her to call over her boyfriend, who was waiting outside. The boyfriend entered the restaurant and removed Ms. Michael from the store without really interacting with the defendant. This was not some sort of angry boyfriend confrontation scenario. He removed her so that she would be safe from the restaurant. The defendant then followed them outside and began saying things to them. The defendant and her boyfriend then had words in the intersection of Susquehanna and Chadwick for several minutes. The two parties went their separate ways. Defendant walked towards 17th Street, then northbound towards Dauphin Street, where he was last seen on video. Yes, there was video in the store where this situation began. The complainants went back to the bar. You may recall they were celebrating their first anniversary as a couple. About 20 minutes later, Ms. Michael left the bar to take a walk to cool down after the encounter with the defendant. She was still understandably upset with his conduct. She walked up the 2200 block of North Chadwick Street, followed by her boyfriend. About halfway up the block, the two of them encountered the defendant, who was sitting on the steps of an abandoned house. The defendant got up from the steps and said a few words to the boyfriend before he pulled out a black handgun and shot the boyfriend in the torso. After the boyfriend fell to the ground, the defendant shot him 9 more times, including once in the back of the head. He survived. The defendant turned his attention to Ms. Michael and shot at her several times, striking her once in the back, causing her death. There was no video of the actual shooting. Video from inside the premises of the restaurant was recovered. And I must say the police did a remarkable job in solving this case with limited information, a job that took them until 2019. It took them 3 years, essentially, to make an arrest in this case. I would like to thank PPD's Detective Francis Graff for his exceptional investigative work, for hanging with this case, for not giving up, for getting a result. I'd also like to thank ADA Jeff Hajnowski for his diligence and his excellence, not to mention his excellent supervision within the homicide unit, now headed by Joanne Pescator. And I'd also like to thank Tanya Johnson, mother of homicide victim Amber Michael, for her courage. I'm going to ask that Mr. Hajnowski come forward first, and then I'm going to ask that Ms. Johnson come forward second. I will not get up in between the two of your presentations, and please say what you have to say.
Good morning. There's not much I can really add to the facts. D.A. Kreisner pretty much laid out the basics of the case, but I do want to give special acknowledgement to Ms. Johnson, who is here, who was there every day during the trial, and who was really a strong source and a pillar for me in trying this case, as well as her father, Amber's father, Marcel Michael, who could not be here today. I really want to say thank you to Detective Graff and his partner, Detective Timothy Scaley. They did a fantastic job on this case, and really, if it weren't for them, this case would have probably been unsolved. As D.A. Kreisner explained, the case, this is a very tragic case of a boyfriend and girlfriend out to celebrating their anniversary. They went out for a good time, and it turned into a complete and utter nightmare. September 5th, as I said, when I made my sentencing recommendation to the judge, is a day that should have been a day of celebration for this young couple. And every year now, Amber's boyfriend will constantly, and her family, will remember that day as one of the worst days in their entire lives. This case was tried in front of a judge. The judge did find the defendant guilty, and we did make a recommendation of 35 to 70 years for this defendant, which he did impose. And the defendant is serving a term of 35 to 70 years. I will add that this case didn't have a whole lot of forensics to go by. The gun in this case was never recovered. We did have shell casings, but no gun to match. A lot of this was based off of the surviving boyfriend's testimony, which was largely corroborated by the video that we recovered, or that was recovered from inside and outside of that takeout store, that pretty much was on point for everything he said and how it happened. In no way, shape, or form was Amber or her boyfriend the aggressor in any way. In fact, to the contrary, the boyfriend very calmly tried to separate the two of them inside of the store, very calmly tried to walk them across the street. and acted appropriately in every way, shape, and form. By way about this defendant, I'll tell you that he does have a pretty lengthy history, primarily of narcotics trafficking in that area, particularly I think it was the 2200 block of, or 2300 block of North Colorado Street, which is about a block away from there. While in custody, he has picked up several infractions for fighting and violent behavior. A credit to the judge for recognizing that was all presented and realizing that this is a dangerous individual, and the streets of Philadelphia are much safer now that he's not on them. In terms of family support, again, Ms. Johnson is here, and I guess you can step up and make any comments you'd like to make.
Good afternoon. First, again, just to speak as our DA did, I want to thank the DA, and I want to thank Jeff and Kathy and everyone on the staff for all their diligence, especially Detective Graff, for their hard work, for keeping me informed, for coming to me with everything that they found and everything that they did. I couldn't have asked for more. I just want to speak on behalf of my daughter. She was absolutely amazing. And I'm not saying that as her mother. I'm saying that as another human being looking at another human being. She was a Bloomsburg graduate. She did nothing but improve her community. And not just in Philadelphia, also across Jersey, outside into the counties, Chestnut Hill and Delaware County. She worked with children. She was a TSS worker. She had her own children that were assigned to her, and she was important to them. She was an egg donor, and she donated to women who couldn't have children. And every day of her life, she did nothing but try to be the best type of person she could be. Even in this circumstance, she meant no harm to him, and neither did her boyfriend. And it was tragic, and it was unnecessary. And I look for the DA and everyone to continue this excellent job. This is one case that was done without flaw, and I can do nothing but appreciate that on behalf of her. I'm just grateful. I'm very, very grateful, and there are no words to express what you feel when something like this happens, especially when it happens to someone who didn't deserve it. She was one of the dancers for Power 99's Peace on the Street. She had just done that performance on a few days before. And then less than 48 hours later, this happened. So it just speaks volumes as to we have to help each other. We have to do better. We have to do better as a community. And you have to step up, and we have to say more and see more and speak on more. Because if we don't, just as I'm standing here someday, it could be you. And you don't want this position. It's awful. It's absolutely awful. And it's nothing you ever get over. So again, I appreciate DA Krasner and Jeff and Kathy and Detective Graff and everyone. All the police that were there that evening. Everyone. I can only say thank you. But I say to this community, we have to do better as a community, because if we don't, we're going to lose this battle. We're going to lose. Thank you.
Ms. Johnson, did you want to show those photographs?
I do. This is my daughter. This particular photo here was at an event called Ruby's Kids. And she would gather Christmas toys for children who were in foster homes, homeless, needed coats. We did so much in the community. And that's a loss. It's not just a loss to me. It's a loss to all of you. It's a loss everywhere. And again, I just plead, we have to do better. We have to do better. They can't do it by themselves. We have to step up, and we as a community And we are a community whether we want to be or not. We all have to do better.
Thank you. Kathy? Good job. Thank you. Obviously, this case, it's a tough one. But from the perspective of those of us whose job it is to prosecute these cases, to help to solve these cases and work with other collaborators, let me just say this. This case is an example of how trust being rebuilt in a community can have a profound impact on our ability to prosecute cases. As Ms. Johnson stands here and asks witnesses to step forward, to come forward, to say things in a case where we essentially had no witnesses to the shooting, with the exception of the young man who survived. I hope the public will understand that this DA's office is trying its best to be fair, trying its best to protect people. And by the way, many thanks to City Council for coming up with some more money. God bless City Council for doing that. So we're in a better position to protect potential witnesses. On the one hand, we need to build that trust so we can have more witnesses come forward and participate and know that they not only will be protected, but they will be treated fairly. Maybe that's some of the lesson that comes out of various things we've tried to do to make the system fair. On the other side, this is also a case that is an example of how a state-of-the-art forensics lab, state-of-the-art forensic capacity could have given us that additional layer of evidence so that this case would have been stronger. Jeff Hushnowski did a remarkable job. This police officer did a remarkable job. But it took a few years for this detective to arrest the defendant. And it took a lot of good work at prosecuting a case where we could have used another layer of evidence. It took a lot of good work to be able to get a conviction on this case and a sentence of 35 to 70 years. This is a victory, make no mistake. But this is a victory where we could have been on stronger footing if members of the community had come forward. And we could have been on stronger footing if we had the 150,000 square foot lab that we need instead of the 47,000 foot lab that has excellent leadership, but needs the machines, needs the personnel, needs the modern tactics that will enable us to solve cases more quickly and to have the evidence be much stronger. Now, I do want to say this to all of you. It is not going to be every press conference where I endeavor to keep the focus on the topic here, but we are in the presence of the mother of a homicide victim. And that is my focus. Are there questions? Yes, sir.
Okay, was this case, was it tried as a first-degree murder case?
This case was tried before the Honorable Scott O'Keefe. It was charged murder generally, which includes first-degree murder. But there were two different transcripts. You had two different victims. So one was the victim of the shooting, and the other one was the victim of a fatal shooting. The judge considered all the evidence. He came in with a verdict in the third degree on the homicide, and then he came in with convictions on many other charges. And so his sentence was 35 to 70 years.
Okay, so with the judge, and where do you stand on the fact that the judge did not convict on the first degree?
The judge is J. Scott O'Keefe, who, for those of you who know, is a very, very experienced judge, both prior to hitting the bench in criminal justice and afterward. I have no criticism. This is a case where a good fact finder, whether it was a jury or it was a judge, could have drawn this conclusion. He drew this conclusion. I respect the independence of the judiciary, and I have no criticism for an honest verdict from a capable judge.
But third degree in Pennsylvania, correct me if I'm wrong, means that you meant to hurt somebody. You had malice, but you didn't have premeditation to kill them. But because you hurt them so severely, they died. So you shoot somebody 9 times, 1 time in the head, and shoot somebody in the back. You clearly intended to kill them. So how could you say that the judge got it right here?
Number one, because the judge got it right. I've been in this business for 34 years. I've tried a lot of homicide cases myself. And the reality is that you're dealing with a scenario in which a proper fact finder could reasonably find third degree, which is why we tried it on third degree. They could reasonably find first degree, which is why we tried it on first degree. And I'm not going to be Lynn Abraham. I'm not going to sit here and pick on judges or juries because they do their level best and they come in with an honest verdict. Are there any other questions?
I have other questions.
Yes, sir.
Last week, related to this topic, generally speaking, last week you spoke out about a sentence or a ruling from the judge that he dismissed the charges on 2 police officers who you had charged with assaulting a young man. The 2 defendants were brothers on the police department, James and Patrick Smith. You suggested that you may rearrest them. Where are you in that decision on whether to recharge them?
Mr. Dean, I will actually be happy to talk to you about that after we finish the conference, but because it is a little bit off the topic, please bear with me. I'll talk to you about that after the conference. Are there any other questions related to the topic of this press conference at this time? All right, thank you very much.